Live? There we go. I think we're live. There we are. All right. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for taking some time out of your early Sunday morning, doing this to not only get some information out there to everybody right from the jump start, right as everyone is starting their day, but we're also going to be going to church this morning. And please, Willow's here. I'm not going to church because of this. I mean, I am. I'm also planning on. That's why I'm dressed like I am. I'm also planning on hopefully getting folks in congregation up to speed on this system. But this is usually a traditional family routine every Sunday. So don't sit there and be like, oh my gosh, David's going to church this morning because of the hurricane. But yeah, so we're going to be doing this first thing in the morning. Thank you, everybody, for those of you who can tune in. Please tap in the chat. Let me know where you're watching from. And we've actually had a lot of very interesting up-and-comings this morning. I've been trying to keep tabs on this. Willow, please stop. You're going to nudge my mouse. Recon is in the system right now. Please stop. You're going to have to go down if you're going to keep nudging everything. Recon is in the system right now, and they're flying around the core. And if you guys tuned in yesterday and have been following the storm for a while now, I'd been touching on the fact that these smaller systems can be deadly. They can be positive. It's always a give and take. With these smaller systems, naturally the damage path is going to... All right, Willow, you got to go. You got to go down, honey. I'm sorry. Go. Keep nudging the mic out of the way. These systems naturally being so small and so compact, the damage path, the damage swath is going to be a lot less widespread than, say, the likes of an Ian, a Helene, a Wilma, a Katrina, etc. They're going to be more Andrew, Charlie-esque, more or less. The problem with that is, and that's why I have water vapor pulled up for you guys this morning, is since they're so small, they're so tightly wound up, that leaves us with two inevitable factors. Number one, they tend to spin up very quickly. They can intensify very quickly. They can weaken very quickly. So again, quid pro quo, always one way or the other with these systems. Other problem is, since they're so compact, they tend to wall off very quickly. Willow, what do you can tell that something's going to happen because she's never been this uppity to sit on my lap. And animals know before we do. So it goes to show. I'm sorry. Please wait. Just wait. I don't know why anyways, you can see here that the system is very small in size, and the reason we're using our water vapor satellite shot is to show you guys what is going on here in terms of the dry air. So the dry air has almost done zilch at this point in terms of whether or not it'll actually get into the center. This is not a Francine type setup to where all that continental air is already rushing in the backside of it. You can see here in the mid-level satellite shot that the water vapor is definitely, the dry air is far to the north of where our system is currently. So the dry air is a non-issue right now, and with the models trending a bit further towards the south, initially, this actually might prevent the dry air and the wind shear from interacting with the system, at least until it gets closer to Florida. So we still have that possible window of opportunity for this thing to wind down on approach to landfall, just as we saw with Idalia last year. Thanks, Willow, for calming down. But right now, all the models are trending towards the Yucatan and eventually curving back up towards the north and east like so. This could also be a positive for us. We want this thing to keep nudging down to the south. The more land interaction we can get with the Yucatan Peninsula. I had someone comment on my video yesterday, why do you want it to trend south? That puts these people in harm's way. It's like, well, at this point, we're rooting for any bit of positive information that we can get here. And I know, unfortunately, it's going to rope negative into the equation. So, of course, you extrapolate this forward, and if it continues to trend more southerly, the Yucatan will feel a lot more of the heavy rain, the potential flooding, the surge, the high winds. But the land interaction may then help to save Florida. So that's the thing. We have to, once the reconnaissance data gets plugged into the models, we'll definitely have a much better feel on this over the next 6 to 12 hours. I'm not too sure if it'll make it in time for the 12Z suite. It might be an 18 or a 0Z thing. We'll have to wait and see. But right now, it seems like models want to take this much closer to the Yucatan, almost a due east as opposed to an east-northeast, which if it wobbles any further to the south at the last second, this could definitely help us tremendously in the long term, but that's neither here nor there. That's a bit of a synoptic breakdown for you guys. Here's the reconnaissance, and again, very compact storm. If you look at the wind radii here, according to the Reconnaissance OBS, notice how we easily have our identifiable easterly winds along the north side, then they transition to an east-northeast, and then down to a northerly, and eventually, obviously west and west-southwest. Notice how closest to the center is where you suddenly see a huge uptick in your surface winds with a central pressure somewhere in the 990s range. They did happen to find lowest pressure, extrapolated pressure of about 986 millibars in the system. They're probably not going to go with that for their next advisory. They're probably going to go somewhere between 990 993. So definitely for sure. Posting in the chat. I'm sorry, guys. So this is the source right here, the actual aircraft observations brought to us by Tropical Tidbits. Dr. Levi Cowan hosts this site. This is live data from the NOAA aircraft that's flying around the system right now. And they're definitely finding it at the minimum 10 millibars deeper than what the 5 o'clock advisory has, which is detrimental. And the reason I say that is because some of our hurricane models are initializing a little bit closer to real time than what our other global models are. I'm not even going to show you global models. The global models are all over the place still. Icon came in as a weak tropical storm. Canadian model's doing its own thing. The Euro is probably the only one that has been most consistent, and the GFS is finally starting to get back in to what the Euro is thinking, so we're building that confidence. Here's a quick look at the true color visible satellite shot. Again, tiny storm, but please do not take this lightly, because you can see it is a small circumference, which, again, give and take. It's double-edged. Small means North Florida, extreme South Florida will not see very much of this outside of feeder bands, etc. This means Central Florida, wherever the system makes landfall, you're going to receive the worst impacts, and they're going to be very fierce. They're going to crank up quick, and they're going to dissipate quick. And notice that a lot of our convection has managed to hold steady throughout the night. We actually have really good banding firing on all sides of the system. So right now, we really don't have much working for us where it sits down there in the Bay of Campeche. If I switch over to the actual infrared satellite shot, you can see that some of the hot towers dissipated overnight, but we're starting to wall this off. And you know what concerns me about this is exactly what the HAFS-B model has had for us. I'll switch this over. I'm just going to do it now. We're going to derail the live stream. We're going to go to 12Z yesterday with the HAFS-B, and we're going to go to simulated IR satellite imagery. So if you look, this is where we were starting. Let me go back in time a little bit further. This is where we are at the start of this live stream. This is 2 a.m. This is 5 a.m. We're only shortly after this. Notice what the HAFS-B does here. Bam. Starting to see a lot of the convective bands begin to fire. It becomes a lot more distorted. You can see the outer periphery of this system starts to fire a little bit more than the centermost portion of the system. And that's pretty much what we're seeing here on the satellite right now. We're seeing these feeder bands begin to develop and engulf the system with a bit more of that central or that cirrus dense overcast, the CDO. So, yeah, we'll get to that. We're going to get to that. This is a look at our National Hurricane Center homepage. We're going to also talk a little bit about, and forgive me if this seems like a very lopsided live stream. I started at 4 o'clock this morning, had a cup of coffee, prepped a live stream, then we got recon data in it, then we got new models, so I'm essentially rebuilding this from scratch, so bear with me. We have Milton. We might get a special advisory from the National Hurricane Center since we are no longer at 1,003 millibars. We are likely up somewhere between 55 and 60 miles an hour, so we may see a max sustained winds on our next advisory, they should be at 8 o'clock. I would think they're going to start doing the 3-hourly OBS since we have reconnaissance aircraft in the system, and we're going to have a continuous slew of hurricane reconnaissance aircraft in the feature. So I'm assuming we're probably going to see 60 miles an hour at our next update. I hope they don't go with 65, 70. Let's keep this thing as tame as we possibly can. We may even still stay at 50, and the winds may not have fully caught up. We have Kirk. Kirk's still a Category 2. We have Leslie, Category 1, both churning up into the Central Atlantic. We have this next feature that may be Nadine. And then at the end of the live stream, we're just going to very briefly touch on this again. And that's all I'm going to say about that. We're going to touch on that again. This is our latest track brought to us as of the 4 Central, 5 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. For those of you asking, we are still right in the path of this thing. directly over our heads. This is Tampa, St. Petersburg. I have the interactive map pulled up so you can see where the track is expected to go. I am still thinking that this thing could wobble as far south as Sarasota, Fort Myers, and as far north as Spring Hill. This is where my cone of uncertainty would be. I don't know why National Hurricane Center still has this. The synoptics are not going to support that. It could wander further south than it would north, in my opinion. So this is where we stand right now. National Hurricane Center has this as a 120 mile an hour Cat 3 on approach. It will likely be anywhere between 115 to a $120 at landfall. Once it gets to Central Florida, if you look here, as it's exiting northern Brevard County, we're at 90 miles an hour. That is pivotal. We talked about this ad nauseum yesterday. As it works its way through Central Florida, we are likely to see anywhere between 85 to 100 mile an hour winds right around that center of circulation. This is downtown Orlando that National Hurricane Center and a lot of our model data is suggesting where it will move. So West Florida evacuations should be underway. If they are not, then they should be coming very soon, I would imagine. Central Florida needs to be prepared for hurricane conditions, regardless. We're not talking models. We're not talking the track. Regardless, this is not going to wobble up to Gainesville and Jacksonville. This is not going to wobble way down far to the south to West Palm, Miami, etc. So Central Florida, everybody in this pink box right here needs to be prepared for hurricane conditions. It's going to be moving at such a perpendicular angle to the terrain, the geography of Florida, that we will have a hurricane on the west coast and we will likely have a hurricane on the east coast. You will likely be in a hurricane warning if you are in Pinellas, Hillsborough, outer lying vicinity counties, all the way to Volusia, to from Volusia to Polk, to Orange, to Seminole, to Osceola. You're likely going to be under a hurricane warning. This whole area will likely be under a hurricane warning. It is a compact storm, so the strongest winds are going to stay right along the center, thankfully. Now, the problem is, if we are expecting weakening with this system on approach, that could change things a little bit. Because as we know, when these systems are very violently rotating around their core, the winds tend to consolidate and become a lot more aggressive right around the center. So if we do start to see dry air, if we do start to see wind shear working its way in as it's on its final approach, the wind field will expand. So right now, based on the current trajectory and the current prediction, the core of the system, your strongest winds are going to move like so. These could very well be your hurricane, if not hurricane plus level conditions. Your tropical storm conditions will likely only go so far beyond that. And I know this seems tiny. And the National Hurricane Center charts will probably look a lot more widespread. But if you guys recall, first of all, there's no black and white with weather. And second of all, those graphics tend to err on the worst case. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be that expansive. This is a tiny storm. It's tiny in comparison to what we saw with Debbie and with Helene. It's working for us, but it's working for a select few against some of us. So even if the track deviates up to the north or deviates down to the south, we need to be prepared inside this parallelogram, I'll call it, for hurricane conditions, period. These are your likely flood potentials over the next 5 days. As people have already mentioned in the chat, we already have some rainfall expected to come in throughout the day today and tomorrow. And then this is going to help to wrap everything up into a nice bundle. That's the kicker here. We have a preliminary setup. We have a precursor system, as everyone's calling it. I know that acronym is being tossed around. That's the buzzword for this morning. I'm not going to use it. We're just going to say we had another area of low pressure, a very weak vortice, decide to work its way through, and it's coming across. This is what National Hurricane Center had first highlighted. So if you guys have been seeing a lot of people out there saying this has been slow to develop, this has been slow to evolve, that's incorrect. If you've been following the history of this from the jump start, Like we have been at News 6 and here on the Weather Center, we had one area that started in the Caribbean, wandered north, didn't do anything. We had another area up here that wandered this way. It's right there. Look at the showers and storms here. We had another feature that was here, wandered eastward along that frontal boundary in the high pressure over the United States, didn't do anything. Then this came up, remnants of a depression from the East Pac. It interacted with the instability left over from our anticyclone and the outflow provided by these other little reminiscent vortices, and this is what fired up. This is what fired up. So it's not that this has been a slow to evolve system, it's been a slow to evolve pattern, and the sad reality is once this beat feature got up into the Bay of Campeche, kicked off. We're going to get there. I see a lot of questions in the chat right now. We're going to get there. I'm short on time this morning, so I want to hit all the newest information that I have for you guys, and then I'm happy to answer questions. So again, flash flooding is going to be a risk. Coastal impacts are going to be a high risk, particularly for Tampa, St. Petersburg, even down towards Fort Myers, Clearwater, Sarasota, Charlotte Harbor, Bradenton, Venice Beach, everywhere in between, everywhere right in through here, I would believe, more so down towards the south, wherever this system makes landfall, are going to receive much of the storm surge. It's not going to be as fierce. It's still relative. A lot of the terminology I'm using right now is relative, okay, because we've already had Helene. We're still recovering. Some people haven't even had the ability or the capabilities of getting started with their recovery, so prepare for a lot of water in a short period of time. Here's a look at our super ensembles. I'm going to move my head out of the way so I can get you to the full chart. The super ensembles are slowly coming into better agreement. We had seen some northward biases in the GFS. A lot of folks are throwing around Ian. The GFS, and I mentioned this yesterday, the GFS did in fact do the same thing for Ian. It tried to plow right through a dominant blocking setup. A force field, if you will. I showed you guys yesterday. Please refer back to my live stream yesterday in terms of what's steering this. We're not going to talk too much about that. I want to focus on all the up-and-comings and the potential impacts and how this is going to evolve over the next 48 hours. If you notice, a lot of our singular ensemble members were experiencing a pretty significant outage for the euro. I'm not too sure why a lot of the models, or not the models, excuse me, the websites that will populate individual spaghetti plots from the EPS, the European Ensemble Suite, they're not getting it. So if you notice, we're missing the red and we're missing our spaghettis from the euro here. But rest assured, I've been looking at it and I will show you the euro is situated right in that same general swath right there. So at this point in time, we can rule out Gainesville, Cedar Key, Perry. This is not going to be another Big Bend storm. We just do not have that capability here. We have a high pressure that's expected to be right over top the Appalachians, and we have an outlining frontal system that's going to be positioned like so. That is your force field. Has anyone seen Star Wars? Anyone seen Independence Day when they shoot the missiles and it bounces off the green force field? Same kind of setup here. That front is going to keep pushing it eastward. It's not going to be able to go north, and it's dang well not going to be able to bounce back to the west. It has only one way to go. We have an anticyclone in the upper levels here, also steering it right over Florida, so it only has one path to go, and that's straight east, east-northeast. So we're starting to see a bit more of that ensemble agreement. This is a blend of the GFS, the Canadian, as well as the UK, not the Canadian, I'm sorry, and the UK model. The euro, once again, is not present here, but I'll show you those on a different website. And you can see a large majority of them have them right in through here. So from Tampa, Clearwater, south to Fort Myers, we need to be watching closely. Orlando, Altamont Springs, Winter Park, DeLand, Sanford, Oviedo, Kissimmee, Poinciana, St. Cloud, Lakeland, further inland near Brandon. I'm trying to think of all the places as possible. And everybody in the Four Corners counties and outer-lying vicinity counties need to be prepared for hurricane conditions. Whether it be a Cat 1 or a Cat 3, a Cat 4, we need to be bracing and ready to rock and roll for hurricane conditions. I'm going to get you right into the hurricane models. Let me make sure that they are updated with all the information that we have. Let me go back to 6Z. There we go. So we'll start with the H-Wharf. And these models have, I'm very curious to see what 12Z, if not 18 or 0Z has for us when recon data gets in. So this is our H-Wharf, initialized a little higher than where we sit right now. This is 5 a.m. There's 8 a.m. We're coming up on 8 o'clock right now. A little high, but not too much. So we're initializing fairly well. You go into tomorrow morning, 12Z, 8 a.m., we're already looking at a major hurricane, according to the H-Wharf. You go forward in time to 8 o'clock on Tuesday morning. Notice how close we are to the Yucatan, though. This is your Yucatan Peninsula right there. So still not close enough to be a detriment to this center of circulation, but it has wobbled towards the south. This is one piece that we need to cling to. Again, we need to find as many positives in this situation as possible. And the more this thing wanders towards the Yucatan, that southern half is going to be cheese grated. I know the Yucatan isn't exactly a mountainous region, but still, any land interaction we can feed this is going to help us, especially on the immediate west coast. Sorry, the immediate west coast. I don't think we're fully into the end of the run. This is where it caps off at 6 Zulu. I'll switch us back to the 0Z in case you guys haven't been tracking. If you notice, the 6Z Ensemble Suite, or not Ensemble Suite, the Hurricane Model Suite is going stronger. They're stronger with this feature. The H-Wharf on the 0Z run has a landfall directly into St. Petersburg as advisories out. So we called it. Justin Wilson, thanks for the heads up. They must have, oh yeah, it's the 8 o'clock advisory. Let's go back over very quickly. Let's go in and let's take a look. Public advisory. As of 7 a.m. Central, 8 a.m. Eastern, we have central pressure, 991, 60 mile an hour, moving east at 90 degrees. So it is moving due east at 90 degrees. You guys have heard me say the degrees before. If you look at a clock or a compass, 90 degrees is as east as you could possibly go. Central pressure has deepened over 10 millibars in the last, we'll say, 6 to 8 hours. In fact, it was probably lower than what we were guesstimating by National Hurricane Center for each advisory until we got reconnaissance aircraft in there. So 991 goes to show that the H-Wharf came in a little on the weaker side. This is still showing a landfall. The landfall has actually been nudged forward. This is now an 8 a.m. Thursday landfall. So still some timing issues here, and Ensembles last night and this morning also showed that bit of a speed spread in terms of coming in sooner, coming in later. We'll switch over to the HAFS A model, and I'm just going to pause the frame right here because this is why I hope that reconnaissance data into the models helps us. HAFS A was a bit more conservative after the initial model run yesterday. If you look here, this is a Cat 5. This is a Cat 5 hurricane, 911 millibars. This is as of late Tuesday night, getting into Wednesday morning. Ignore the central pressure because this is a 6Z run. Please pay no attention to the central pressure. I would say, realistically speaking, this could be a Cat 3, a Cat 4. We're going to ignore the Cat 5 staring right at us in the face here because this is prior to recon data, so recon could help us. We'll have a bit more of a justified model to look at once we get later into today and we do an evening update with you guys. As you can see, all of our hurricane models are trending a bit further to the south. This is a landfall as we go into Wednesday night, early Thursday morning. So we're slowly pushing this to Thursday. We're slowly pushing it to Thursday. 962 millibars landfalling right into clear water. This would put Tampa, St. Petersburg, Tampa Bay, the entirety of the Tampa Bay on the rough side of this system. All the convection is going to be sheared to the north, so we might not realize as much of the heavy rainfall tornado risk down across much of our viewing area for Osceola, Polk, Pinellas, Hillsborough County, getting down towards Sarasota, Venice Beach, Charlotte Harbor, down to the south of Osceola and Polk as well. South of I-4, basically. This will bring a Cat 3 into Central Florida. This is pretty much parked right over Orange County as a Cat 2. This is 8 a.m. as the sun's coming up. HAFS B. HAFS B is the scary one. I'm going to just warn that right there and then. HAFS B is the one that really blows its top. It initialized the best. If you go back and notice, this is 12Z. This is 8 o'clock. You look at the 8 o'clock advisory, 991 millibars. You look at the central pressure here initialized, 990 millibars. So HAFS B has definitely been initializing a little bit better than the rest of our hurricane suite. As we go through time, we're expecting hurricane by tonight. Hurricane Milton likely by the 8 p.m. advisory according to the HAFS-B model, also trending much closer to the Yucatan. If you see, we are right off the Yucatan coast. Very, very compact storm. Tiny little buzzsaw here. This is already approaching Cat 4, Cat 5 intensity. Crosses over to Cat 5. Deepens all the way down to 899 millibars. Again, please don't put a lot of stock into this. This is not as realistic as we could be when we have our reconnaissance data plugged into these models. This is also a 6Z run, so we're not getting as much fresh data as we would have at 0 or at 12 coming up later this morning. Folks, we have a lot of people in the chat right now. Just want to emphasize pushing that like button. We got to get this information out. We need to get it out because I don't believe anybody else is going to be up as early as I am doing an update for you guys to kind of initiate Sunday. Let me take a look. I'm going to check my YouTubes right now to make sure. Yeah, no, nothing. Nothing. So please spam the living daylights out of that like button. Let's get this video out there. If you're new to the channel, I'm not looking for subs. If you want to subscribe, I really appreciate it. I genuinely love the support. Thank you very much for trusting in this channel, but I really want you to hit that like button more than anything to get this information out there into the weather sphere. Let's get it out there and let's go, let's go, let's go. Let's feed the algorithm. That's all we're doing. You're not feeding me. Feed the algorithm. Let's get this information out there so everybody can wake up, start their day. And for those of you, Nimble Navigator, I feel you working those night shifts. I used to pull graveyards a lot back in the Air Force, so I get it. And for those of us that may be wrapping up their workday, they want to come in for the latest information. So again, I want you to ignore that central pressure. I'm not even going to have that pulled up because we're still not fully initialized with our reconnaissance data. But notice here, this is 8 p.m. on Wednesday night. So we're trending more towards an evening Wednesday, if not very early Thursday. That's about a 12-hour difference. Yesterday we were thinking morning time on Wednesday, a landfall. That's good news. This could be buying us some time for any kind of preparations or planning or communication that you may not be having with folks or may not have had over the weekend. I looked at a lot of my Instagram stories. I follow a lot of weather folks out there on my social medias, and a lot of folks are still out attending games, going to shows, going out and, downtown and all that. So not only take the time to communicate with your folks, prepare, but also enjoy. Take a load off. If this gets pushed back an extra day, that gives us an additional 12, maybe 18 hours to slow down and not panic, not get overly alarmed. This could be buying us some time a little bit. This could help us as well. It might also weaken a little bit more if it takes longer to get across an eventually hostile Gulf of Mexico. Ocala, you will not have to head for the hills. Michael Monig, thank you very much. T, thank you everybody for nudging the like button. It means a lot. It definitely means a lot. Robbie Lynn McCrary, that was another point I wanted to emphasize as well. That's an excellent point, and I wish I had the capabilities that Jonathan and I do when we're at News 6. Don't like overnight storms, neither do I. Overnight storms never make it any better at all. So if this does end up being a nocturnal event, make sure you have batteries. If you have lanterns, candles, etc., just be very mindful when operating those or turning them on. Don't leave them sitting. Don't leave them unoccupied. That's how you set fires when we don't need any fires. We don't need additional insult to injury in this situation. Again, if you rewind to a number of my live streams ago, emergency management for the state of Florida, National Hurricane Center, statistically speaking, most of our injuries and fatalities happen after the storm. So let's not add insult to injury. I will personally, in my household, have candles and gaslit kerosene lanterns, but that's because we're going to be very mindful and vigilant not to just leave it unattended, not let the animals or the kiddos get into it, not let X, Y, or Z get into it, and definitely not just leave it burning and fall asleep or anything like that. So again, we're focusing in on either just to the south or right into Spring Hill or somewhere at about Venice Beach, Sarasota. This is likely where this system is going to come on shore. I don't see this being a south of Fort Myers landfall. I don't see this being a Big Bend, Perry, Crystal River. What is the other area up there? I'm thinking about it. It's a Cedar Key type of landfall. I don't see that. I really do think we're focusing in on the central, if not south central peninsula to the north of Lake Okeechobee in terms of large geographic features. Now, before I answer questions, we've gone 30 minutes, or no, not, yeah, we've gone 30 minutes into the live stream. Before I answer questions, I want to go ahead and, this is where it gets difficult because somebody in the chat is trolling. It was like right on cue. We have a troll in the chat. I don't know how to spin this without sounding hypey. I really don't. I really don't know how to spin this, but the last couple days, we've been seeing indications that an anticyclone, rising motions, instability are once again going to focus on the Caribbean. The red shading here on our probabilities, this is a blend of probabilities here. Obviously, we have Tropical Storm Milton, so they're maxed out. They're at 100% there, coming right across the state of Florida. That's Milton. You go to 168 hours out, Milton's still off our east coast. I really don't even want to use words at this point because, again, I don't want to sound like the textbook YouTube amateur, the weenies. I don't, but it's showing up. You go a little further in time, you go to 192 hours, and the depression probabilities are right there off the coast of Honduras, Nicaragua. You go to 216 hours, 240 hours, 264 hours, and they only continue to consolidate and pull up. You come over to the European ensembles, the active cyclones, and this is what I was talking about earlier. On here, we at least have, and you know what? I'll do us a solid. I'll do us a solid, and I'll bring us in, and we'll go real close. We won't be able to have the lines, the actual spaghetti plots, but I can show you guys up close what the Euro is thinking. And you can see the European model has us primarily focused in right along the west coast of Florida. We have one member up here, one strong member. That's one strong member that goes up into the Big Bend area, and that's probably not going to happen. If you look, a large chunk of our individual members, that's why I don't like using this, because of the fact that it's all just blobs. It's all blobs. You can't really see where the individual members are, but all of our members are focused in right here. We have the one very strong outlier that goes up into the Big Bend. Not going to happen. Not going to happen. We just don't have the pattern for it. And then look at that. We have more ensemble members shortly after that. Let me go back to the big picture again using the EP cyclones. And we'll go to the individual plots, and you can see here, I'll try to zoom us in. See how I mentioned with those individual plots there? They can look very deceiving. Those big blips, it shows like, oh, it's going up to the Big Bend. It's not. That was one member. Let me see if I can do us a favor and zoom us down to the individual plots without my computer screen getting dorked up. Yes, you know, it's not going to let us, unfortunately. This screen does not allow us to do so. Let me see if I can maybe mess with this to zoom us down. That's the one thing I don't like about this weather models page is you can't zoom in too tremendously. There you go. I hope that's okay for you guys. But if you notice, we had one random member right there that goes up into the Big Bend. Just one. Just one member. So no, it's not shifting north. It's not going to go north. Notice how the rest of our ensembles do a fantastic job of showing where that frontal boundary is. The front over North Florida, and all of our members are right across the peninsula. So no, it's not going to go far to the north. We would need the entire East Coast pattern, the trough, the jet stream, the front, the high pressure. We would need all of it to suddenly change. And we are now 3-ish or so days away from landfall. So we do, obviously there's always that 1% chance, but it's not like the entire eastern seaboard is suddenly going to dissolve and we're left with a totally different pattern. So you can see, according to the European ensembles, we are pretty much locked in. We have a large majority of our members, and I'm looking up so I can see the zoomed in portion of it. All of our members are right there, every single one, and we have 2 to the north, and we have a small, maybe half dozen, if not a dozen members down south. But notice how they're all weak. Notice how they're all weak and they interact with the Yucatan. So that's why they're coming in as far south as they are. But the general consensus, the average, the mean, whatever you want to call it, is right through Central Florida, which is why I emphasize we need to be prepared for hurricane conditions, whether that be Cat 1, 70, 75 mile an hour winds, and I know 70 is not Cat 1, but I'm saying with gusts, whether it's 70, 75, it's going to do damage, or 75, 85, 100. So we definitely need to be prepared for something as weak as 70, 75. We need to be bracing for anywhere between 100 some odd miles an hour, even into Central Florida. Again, Charlie back in 2004, I keep using Charlie as an example because it came ashore. Let's go back to the interactive page. It came ashore down here, and by the time it got to Orlando, we were still getting 90, 100 mile an hour winds, and notice how much more land it had to go over. Folks, if this comes ashore, even just slightly weaker than that, 120 to 130, it's only going from here to here. So we're still sitting at a solid 90 to 100 miles an hour, if that, depending on how fast it's going. So we need to be prepared. Everybody inside Florida will probably be under a hurricane warning. I saw someone trolling in the chat. Brevard County, if this holds, you're going to be under a hurricane warning. So Brevard is safe. If you want to listen to that, good luck. And yes, Yamil, fantastic point. Taking into account that it'll be raining 3 days before the hurricane arrives, ground is already super saturated. The soil moisture is through the roof. We saw a statistic and a chart, a graphic that was pulled up at News 6 a couple days ago that shows for a large majority of the Western Peninsula, we are at 185 to 200% saturation, which means that we cannot hold any more groundwater. It's got to just go somewhere. And it's just going to go everywhere at this point. So to wrap up before I start answering questions, there's your spaghetti plots from the European model, and then look down there in the Western Caribbean. You know, not a very prominent signal, not a crazy signal, but it's there. And so we need to keep our head on a swivel. And I know that there's some folks who are upset about what's about to happen with Milton. But if you recall, about 2 weeks ago when we were covering Helene, I also mentioned we got to watch down in this area because there's only a couple spaghetti plots, but that's how it always starts. Here we are. So we're going to keep a close eye on you. You guys don't worry about this. You guys do not worry about a second storm. Take care of your friends, take care of your family, take care of your pets, take care of your belongings. Definitely focus on the real time. Let us meteorologists focus on what's coming, okay? Let us focus on what's coming. You guys focus on your priorities, your livelihood, secure everything that it means the most to you. Let us do the work for you, okay? Let us do the work. If you look at the GFS ensembles at 0Z, there it is. You can see it down there in the Western Caribbean right there, coming up after Milton. I'm pretty sure if we switch over to the GEFS and I zoom us down to the Gulf of Mexico, actually, we're not going to do the Gulf of Mexico. We're going to do the Caribbean. We should have a large majority of our ensemble members in for 6 Zulu to take a look at that. Yeah, there it goes. Not a whole lot of ensemble agreement, but there's still definitely something worth tracking down there. And again, because of where we are in the year, we're in the fall. We're going to have these fronts coming down on a more repetitive basis, so these systems are not likely to go towards Mexico. They're not likely to go towards Texas. They're not likely to go towards Louisiana unless they're weak or they find the perfect time, perfect time to make their way westward. These are all going to be a West Caribbean, Cuba, Cayman Islands, Southeast, East Coast issue. And while you guys are pulling up questions in the chat, I'll go ahead and very quickly segue. Oh, shoot. I'm so sorry. I just realized I never switched back the overlay. You guys were looking at a zoomed-in image. Once again, why I don't like that weather models will not allow me to zoom in. There we go. So, while you guys drop questions in the chat, please take your time dropping questions. I almost want to put slow mode on just in case so I'm not either spammed or I miss your question. I'll show you what's steering our system. We'll go to 12Z on Wednesday. Check this out. This is why I really cannot see this being a North Florida issue. I can't. We have a 1020 polar high over the Midwest, seeping down over Dixie Alley, the Southern Plains, and across the eastern seaboard. Look at where our cold front is. That is your force field. That's your barrier. So if this system is going to track anywhere, it's going to be just to the north of Tampa, St. Petersburg, or just to the south. Looking at this configuration, if it comes in a little faster, I could see it being a little further to the north. If it comes in a little bit slower, it'll be towards the south. But where we stand right now, this is not going to be a Big Bend, Tallahassee, Cedar Key, Perry, Florida issue. This is definitely going to be a West Coast Florida problem. Scott Patton, it is overperforming. It is 100% overperforming as we speak. Cyber Andy, right now, storm surge into the Bay Area will likely be catastrophic. I know we realized 6 to 8 feet of storm surge during Helene. That was offshore. If this comes ashore right over St. Petersburg, it will likely bring anywhere between 10 to 12 feet of storm surge at the minimum. At the minimum. I can't predict exactly how high it will be until we have an organized system within 24 hours of our coastline. Swollscape, it will not hit Miami. Miami, Fort Lauderdale are sitting pretty. We are definitely sitting pretty. South Florida is going to be okay. Again, remember, it's a small storm, everyone. It's a tiny storm. This is going to be a compact system in comparison to Helene, Ian, Floyd, Dorian, just to throw out some huge systems. This is not going to be a big system. Notice the size even right now. It's only about yay big. We have some cirrus dense overcast. Let me go ahead and draw that again just to really encompass it. We have some cirrus cloud outflow on the south side, but look at that in comparison to the state of Florida. It is going to be a small storm. So it's not going to completely affect everybody. And the wind field will be much smaller than Helene, okay? Helene was much wider. It was a different type of storm. These storms are all different. This will be a lot smaller. Dorian was huge. Dorian was a big storm off our east coast. That's why everybody in Florida was panicking about it until it parked over the Bahamas and moved to the north. Dorian was a big storm. This is more of a Charlie Andrew type storm, very small, like a saw blade. DeLand is going to receive impacts. DeLand should be prepared for hurricane conditions. Seffner, Florida, I'm not super familiar with that area. If Seffner is in Central Florida, Seffner is in Hillsborough County. You are going to receive a large majority of it. Wayne Fouts, I'm in Polk County. We will likely see hurricane conditions here in Polk County. Altamont Springs will likely see hurricane conditions. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, and I say this in the most polite of ways, if you're naming cities, here, if you're naming cities all in this general area, hurricane conditions, period. Hurricane conditions. I'm not brushing you off. I'm not ignoring you. I don't want to make it seem like I'm shrugging you off. I'm putting everything together. Look at the track. If we're expecting this thing to wobble maybe this far north or this far to the south, anywhere in between this area, hurricane conditions, period. Hurricane conditions. All the way up. If you're up near Gainesville, Palm Coast, you're still under the gun. You got to watch out. If you're down near Cape Coral, West Palm Beach, Coral Springs, and even further down to the south, you're okay. It's not going to be as bad. This, where I have my pink drawn, is where I personally see this wobbling. The center could be here. The center could be here. That would be my prediction. We could see a landfall here, or anywhere in between, which means it'll exit here, or anywhere in between. And as it moves across, this entire area could likely see hurricane force winds. Because once again, if it comes ashore at $120 or $130, moving as quick and at this angle, it will exit the coastline as a 75, 85 mile an hour hurricane. So you will likely see hurricane conditions even well off the East Coast because of the angle. The angle, folks. The angle is what's killing us here. We want systems to come up at a lot less of a steep angle. We want the Irmas, we want the Charlies, and I don't say that, weird. I'm not saying that we want the strong hurricanes. I'm saying we want the angle because, God forbid, we're getting nuked down here. It's not going to be as bad up here. The problem with this here is if you're anywhere in central Florida, if it comes in at such a sharp angle, and when I say sharp angle, notice that, let's say Florida is, let me use a different color. Let's say Florida is a regular old triangle. If a storm cuts across from the top of the triangle to the bottom of the triangle, notice how much room it has to cover. It'll weaken fairly quickly as it moves from north to south. Let me change that line. If it moves from here to here, notice it's covering a lot less area. It's moving a lot less, it's covering a lot less area. It will not have as much time to weaken as if it went this way. So because of the orientation of Florida, I'll draw an isosceles triangle right now. Instead of going up through much of the meat and potatoes of the triangle, it's cutting across. So it's not going to have as much of time to weaken. Ocala is to the north of our track. Ocala is here, so you should definitely be prepared for anywhere between 50 to 70 mile an hour winds if this thing wanders to the north. If it wanders to the north, you're going to see more. If it stays down on its current trajectory, Orlando, Lakeland, my area, Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater is going to see the worst of it. Deltona, Daytona Beach, Port Orange, Titusville, the Space Coast, Patrick Space Force Base, you'll likely see hurricane conditions. Remember, everybody, I'll go ahead and turn the actual interactive track off so we don't focus on the track. If I were to draw a swath here, this is where I would say our hurricane conditions are most likely to occur. Let me make my pen super big. Like so. So if you are in that area, use the map to your advantage, everybody, in the chat right now. If you are in that area, you should be prepared for a hurricane. No questions asked. To the north, maybe tropical storm conditions, severe weather, flooding. To the south, maybe tropical storm conditions, severe weather, flooding. But where that pink is, based on our ensembles, based on models, run to run, we're not being reactive here. We're never reactive, okay? Not reactive. We're not looking at one or two model runs, looking at the last 36 hours where the models have predicted this could go. In that hot pink mess that I just drew for you guys is where you need to be on the mindset of, I could see a hurricane over the next few days. Okay? And yes, somebody just mentioned we have almost 1,300 people watching. Let's hit the like button. Again, I'd love if you subscribe, but I'm not going to plug subscribe. Turn your notifications on. No, I just want you to like this video so it can get out there first thing Sunday morning. We had an update from National Hurricane Center. We were here during the Reconnaissance aircraft. We're covering impacts. So let's at least like this video so as soon as YouTube gets it, it can push it out to everybody, especially in Florida. That's all I ask. I'm not asking for anything else. Venice, Florida here. I don't think we've ever had a direct hit here, but wouldn't be surprised if this pulls a Charlie and heads a little further south than Tampa. Rob Wiseman. Hopefully it does. That was where I was getting after yesterday. And again, we know this system is coming to Florida, so folks are going to take damage. But the reason I say I hope it trends south for two reasons. Number one, likely means it's weaker. Number two, the Bay Area of St. Petersburg and Tampa, the greater Tampa area, will receive offshore flowing winds. I'll zoom us down in and talk about that. If the system were to come ashore near Clearwater or to the north of that, and let me make sure I shrink my pen down, all that surge is going to be forced in directly, right up in, and you're going to flood bad. If it heads to the south of Tampa, let's say it makes landfall in Sarasota, then, again, there is no way to cut this in a positive manner. There's no way. South of that area will receive the worst storm surge, but the wind flow across Tampa, St. Pete, Clearwater, Bradenton will be from the east, so you won't realize as much of a storm surge. That's why I said yesterday, I hope this trends to the south. Okay? That's why I hope it trends to the south. It's not that I want folks elsewhere to get hit harder than others. I just understand the risks. You know, if it trends too far to the south, then this area is going to flood really bad. And, you know, there's no way to escape it. There's no way to get out of this. It's just a matter of, I know that this area received I know that this area received a lot from Helene, so that's why I'm saying let's get this thing further south. But if we're being very realistic and very honest, there's, everybody should be prepared. Everybody should be just waiting for this. Everybody needs to take this very serious. That's your steering mechanism. That's your driver. We have high pressure that's going to be stuck here. We have a front that's going to outline that high pressure. That's all that is. The cold front here is just simply outlining that high pressure. It's not anything fancy. Doesn't mean, oh, winter. No, that's not what that means. The front here is just what we use to show the leading edge of this high pressure air mass. So that's the leading edge of the high, so we know that that system's not going to go up into high pressure. It just can't. It just can't. It's going to have to go east. It's going to have to ride along the outer edge of that high pressure. Low pressures do not like high pressures, obviously. High pressure flows towards low pressure. So if we have higher pressures to the north of this system, and this is a strong low pressure, it's going to keep following the lowest pressures. I know that sounds like a tongue twister there, but that's why. So I'm hoping that we have evacuations, at least instructions in place today. We're going to continue to watch this as we go throughout the day today, and then we'll be kicking off our continuous round-the-clock coverage with News 6 as early as tomorrow, if not late tonight, depending on how this transpires. Let's see. Reading a tropical chat that I'm a part of. Okay, no urgent messages or urgent updates. Rob Wiseman, thanks, Naz. Hopefully we don't take one on the chin in Venice, but if it saves Tampa St. Pete from catastrophic floods, then so be it. Rob, if we could get rid of the system altogether, if this thing could fall apart, then outstanding. But at this point, we just have to be ready. And even if this were to stay weak as a tropical storm, just the fact that we have so much rescue, recovery, and all sorts of things to try to rehabilitate us after Helene going on the West Coast, even a tropical storm wouldn't do us any favors. It wouldn't do us any favors. So the fact that we're looking at a Cat 2 to a Cat 4 on approach just is only insult to injury, salt on the wound. Jacksonville, you're going to see a lot of easterly onshore flow. Lots of easterly onshore flow. The Navy will likely be relocating their assets once again, just like they did with Helene. You're going to see a lot of strong onshore flow, choppy seas, possibly some coastal flooding. Beach erosion is going to be a big issue on the East Coast. Beach erosion is going to be problematic for all of the upper East Coast of Florida, from probably Brevard all the way up. KDO DXN, this is not going to the Big Bend anymore. This will not be a Big Bend storm, thankfully. If you look at the way the synoptic... This is why I was saying earlier in the brief, guys, that we would need the entire East Coast U.S. to just dissolve into a totally different pattern at this point. We would need this continental polar high to fall apart. We would need this mature wave to be somewhere totally different. We would need this front to be completely oriented a different direction. There's absolutely no way this becomes a panhandle issue. This is going to be a central, if not a south-central Florida problem. Dry air could impact Milton. Dry air could. That's why I started us off on the water vapor. Right now, it does not seem like dry air is doing very much to the system. We still have really good convection firing along on sides. The driest air is to our north. Maybe we can see a Francine-type issue where it tries to suck in some dry air off the continental Mexico landmass and down up into its south side and southeast corner, but we'll have to wait and see. Miami is going to be okay. Miami is going to be fine. What is Fort Pierce facing? Let me just double check. I know I'm familiar with Fort Pierce, but I want to make sure I'm thinking of the right Fort Pierce. So Fort Pierce, you're pretty far to the south of where this thing is expected to track ashore, so I would hold off on doing anything major in terms of preparation. Sounds like we have our 6Z European model in. Ocala should be prepared. Gainesville is just a little to the north of where I expect hurricane conditions. And then I got to wrap up this live stream. I see time's ticking. I got to finish up getting ready to go to church. Let's see. So the euro has trended south on its landfall. The euro has trended very far to the south in terms of the overall track. This brings it right into Sarasota, Venice Beach as a Cat 1, possible Cat 2 hurricane. I don't trust it. I do not trust the strength on this model run. If you look at where the model run starts at our current time, it's at 1,006 millibars. It is way too weak. Way too weak. So definitely take this with a huge grain of salt. It doesn't finally get to where we are in terms of current real time 40 hours out. It isn't until late in the day on Monday this system or this model actually catches us up to where the system already is. So take this with a grain of salt, but the track has trended a little bit further to the south. So again, Central Florida will need to be watching. All of us in Central Florida, Central and South Florida, 150%. Let me see what the control member, if we have our ensembles in just yet. We probably don't, but let's take a look. Oh, we do. We are starting to see ensembles. Yeah, so ensembles are also trending south. If you notice, the ensembles have definitely trended more to the south. Even that northernmost outlier that we saw up here on the 0Z is now down here near, ironically, Gainesville, as somebody had just asked. Notice how the euro is now coming in either right into Tampa Bay or right into Sarasota, Venice Beach, immediately north of Fort Myers. So, still a bit of a spread. Definitely a speed spread. This is not what you want to see as well. This derails confidence in terms of landfall. We could have some that are already through us, some that are still lagging back in the Gulf of Mexico by Wednesday night. Highly doubt these members are going to verify. We're going to be somewhere in here by Wednesday night. It is going to pass the loop current, Lizbeth. It will pass the loop current. The loop current's right in through here. It's going to pass right over the loop current. Euro is a dud. It always does horrible in terms of intensity, and I don't know why it's initializing as badly as it is. This is almost a 15 millibar difference. In fact, it is it's a 13 millibar difference. We're at 990. No, never mind. We are 15 millibar difference. So we are not guessing KDODXN. We still have 3 days ahead of us. And again, for those of you who are going to throw shade at us meteorologists, we're not guessing. If we were guessing, I'd just do this. It's coming. See you guys next time. No, we're not guessing. The thing is, these systems don't move in a straight line. You can't expect a hurricane to do this. It does not do that. It's not going to do that. It's going to do this. It's like trying to sip on caffeine, 3,000 milligrams of caffeine, and draw a straight line. It's not going to do that. Crafty Beach, you're very welcome. James Keane, exactly. That's what we're doing right now. We're still 72 hours at the minimum away from landfall. GFS has us here. Euro has us here-ish. So everywhere in between needs to be paying attention. After a certain point, somebody in the chat, Dan Smith, nowcasting correct. This would be your forecast window. Nowcast window would be within 8 hours. In the Air Force, our forecast criteria was anywhere between 12 hours and beyond. That's your forecast. 12 hours out. Nowcast criteria would be now up to 8 to 12 hours. So there is such a thing as nowcast criteria. Then you have your forecast. This here would be your forecast window. This would be your nowcast window. And again, this system is going to wiggle, wobble, do all kinds of crazy things. One Nation Weather, thank you very much for tuning in. I had an epiphany this morning. I need to reply to your email. I have not forgotten that, dude. I have not forgotten it. I know it's still sitting in my Gmail inbox. I will get back to you as soon as I can. Just kind of like what your comment stipulated, this has been an evolving situation, so my brain has been all sorts of different directions. But guys, it's 8:30. I got to get ready to finish, headed out the door for church. We will likely be doing an evening update. Stand by on the timing on that. Ellie Bradenton should be prepared for significant hurricane conditions. Everybody in Central Florida, once again, we'll go back to the interactive track, and that is where I'm going to leave you all. Everybody in this black box here, right here, everybody in that black box needs to be prepared for hurricane conditions. Everybody does. And I'm not saying we're all going to get it. I'm not saying that. Please don't misconstrue my wording as well. Please don't misconstrue that Palm Coast, Palm Bay, everybody is getting hurricane conditions. I'm saying we all should be prepared. I'm going to be prepared. I'm in this box. So again, just as I mentioned yesterday, this does not come as an easy feat, okay? I'm right here. I'm dead center of the box. I'm dead center of the box. So we will also be prepared for hurricane conditions, period. Everybody else needs to watch this system very closely and make sure you have your hurricane preparations in place. But at the minimum right now, tropical storm level conditions from Gainesville, Palm Coast, St. Augustine, Jacksonville, Daytona, etc., down towards Fort Myers, Charlotte Harbor, Punta Gorda, Cape Coral, West Palm, Port St. Lucie, tropical storm conditions. But in the box here, we need to. And again, that's not me saying we are going to get a hurricane set up for everybody. I'm saying we need to be prepared. We need to be prepared. Rafdia191, you're very welcome. I'm Waterfront Pinellas. Alex B., you need to be watching closely for evacuation orders. Thank you. I'm getting ready for church too, sweetheart. Thank you. Bless. Deborah Warner, you're very welcome. The latest monster geoengineered megastorm about to wash Florida off the map. Healing with nature. Wow, I don't know what to make of that comment. But that's where we're going to leave it, guys. Please drop me a comment in the comment section down below upon the conclusion of this live stream. If you have any additional questions, please try to refrain from asking about your town, your zip code, your street address. If you're looking at this map right now and you know you're near Orlando or you're West Coast Florida or you're Osceola, Polk County, anywhere on here, you guys know your local area. You know where you are in Florida, okay? Screenshot this map if you want to, honestly. Screenshot it or just look at your GPS on your phone and just remember where it is right now that we're predicting where the greatest likelihood of seeing hurricane conditions are. That's what this is here, the greatest likelihood that we see hurricane conditions. That's why I have that black line from Hurricane Center turned off. The Hurricane Center wants us to pay more attention to the cone in its entirety, not just the black line. KDOXN, that's exactly what I did for the Air Force, actually. I can do point-based forecasts. It's actually a lot easier than doing a forecast like this. But I'm not going to do that because that's not warranted. It's not warranted. You got to understand your audience, and you also have to understand the phenomena. If we were talking about a thunderstorm, heck yeah, I'm going to be talking about how this part of your area versus that part of your area is going to get hit. We're talking about a big old hurricane 3/4 the size of Florida. Not going to go as far as to, okay, so Hillsborough, Brandon, Florida is going to see this. My area in Haines City versus Davenport is going to get this. That's way too much brain power. Way too much brain power, and we're still 72 hours away from the main event, so we're not going to do that. And actually, I see people mentioning evacuations and travel and all that. I saw a comment yesterday that really resonated with me, and I want to make sure to emphasize this as well before you guys start tuning out. When I say, or when the officials especially, not me or anyone else, but when the officials, we're talking the state, regional, county emergency management, start talking evacuations, in Orlando, in Kissimmee, X, Y, and Z, you don't evacuate. I know that sounds scary to say or weird or may even come off as dumb to some of you, but here in Haines City where I am, we are not going to evacuate. There's no way to adequately evacuate. When we want people to evacuate, it's because you are right up against a large body of water. So if you live in Tampa, St. Petersburg, drive 30 minutes inland. That's it. We're not saying to go from Tampa up to Gainesville, to go from Tampa down to Coral Springs. We're not saying that. If you are right on a large body of water that has the potential of surge or flooding, what you do is you go from your local area and you drive at least 5 to 10 miles inland. That's it. It should only take you 20, 30 minutes. Because once you hit the freeway and you start driving, you're on a road trip to Atlanta, Georgia, you're going to be bogged down in the evacuation traffic. You're going to be bogged down in just garden variety Florida traffic for folks who aren't paying attention, and you're going to be hating your life. So don't do that. If you are in Central Florida or even on the East Coast, you are likely not going to be evacuating. I'm not too sure how the East Coast would work. They may, if it's a hurricane still as it crosses over, they may, to be determined, but this is particularly for our folks who know they're in a flood/surge zone area, and you know you live right up against a body of water. And when I say right up against, I don't mean you open your door, there's your ocean. I mean if you're within a mile or two, and you can drive 5-10 minutes and you're at the beach. That's what I mean. And when you evacuate, you don't move anywhere from Central Florida. You batten down the hatches in Central Florida. It's the coastlines that evacuate to get away from the water with these features. But all right, guys, we're going way over time. Please click that like button if you wouldn't mind. Share this information, please. Share it on your social media. Send them to my page, or even just send it via or share it via word of mouth. Even if you take your phone out and you text people, just watched a video. Don't even have to name drop me at this point. I'm not doing this for the clicks and the subs. If you want to subscribe and follow along, absolutely, I love it. I'm not going to say don't. But right now, what I'm very heavily emphasizing is the communication piece. We need to communicate with everybody, okay? We need to be communicating. Christy House, I live in Florida. Once again, I'll turn the track on this time. That's where National Hurricane Center has the storm going. I'm right here. There's the center. I'm right here. So once again, for those of you who may be sitting there watching from somewhere else, oh, it's very easy for this guy to brief. It's very easy for him to talk and hype up. Yeah, if I don't care about my own well-being, my family's well-being, my house, and, like, I'm in this with you guys. Like, this is as visceral as you can possibly get. And yes, I am going to go to church. Again, I'm not doing it for the storm. This is just something that I always do on the weekends. And on top of that, I'm hoping that I'm given the opportunity to speak to a few people in congregation to let them know what's going on. So thank you all very much for watching. Please consider clicking that like button, nudging this information out to the rest of the world, sharing this information, whether it be sharing the link to this live stream, sharing it via your social media, or just spreading it via word of mouth through text, etc., commenting down below. Please go ahead and drop me any questions, comments, or concerns you have in the comments section down below with this chat or in this live stream once it ends up. And we'll probably see you tonight. We're going to go ahead and let the 12Z data. We're going to get some more recon missions in. We'll probably update you later on this evening. Because again, all, focus on you. Don't be hung up on social media. Don't be hung up on your phone. Don't be hung up on YouTube. Even don't be hung up on the news. We still have a few days, so take care of you. Take care of what you love. Take care of your belongings. Take care of your family, your pets, the elderly. Check in on your neighbors. Let your coworkers know. Everybody you come in contact with, focus on all of you today and tomorrow, okay? Get yourselves together. We are not going anywhere. Your trusted weather sources, whether it be at the Pinpoint Weather Team here at News 6 or wherever you get your reliable information from, we're not going anywhere. We are going to be working for you guys. So you take your time. Don't worry about coming back and watching all the latest. Let us obsess and exhaust ourselves looking at this stuff. Let us obsess over it so we can then tell you what it is that we're seeing and how to prepare, okay? So we'll see you again very soon. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Sunday. We'll probably see you tonight, especially if there's any more up-and-comings. I really can see this going hurricane by tonight, whether it be 8 or 11 p.m. We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to see what shakes out today, and there is still that hope this thing gets some dry air, gets some shear in it, and we might not realize as immense of impacts as possible. So make sure that you guys take time for yourselves, and we'll see you again soon. But until then, this is Weather Center Nazario, signing out.